good morning, and good morning to all you and you out there. Today is Motivational Monday, and our topic of conversation is action, your plan. As you can see on the backboard, if you're live with me, and we are live on our Facebook page at Vibetalkfacingthelion podcast. We're here live. You can join us, and the only way that you'll know that we're on is if you follow our page and set your notification to come on when we're on. Otherwise, here's how you can interact as well by calling into our lines that are open. And you can now text as well. 1-888-721-9260. Everybody's doing something. How about you? What are you doing? Where are you going? What are your plans? What is your plan of action? Thank you for joining me here on Vibe Talk Facing the Lion podcast, where I am your host, Nisi, and my co-host, Trish, will join us very soon. Very soon. Your plan of action. What are you doing? When we think about action, we're thinking about moving, doing something, how we're going to do it, what are we going to use, how do we get there? And today I thought would be a great thing to do the Motivational Monday that talks about action plans. When we think about action plans, we're thinking about going into action, something to do, some direction. When we say action, or when you hear that word action, how do you fare it? How do you determine action? Let's think about that for a moment. Life in general presents opportunities, setback, circumstances, objectives. But first we must think about planning. Sometimes with life we get obstacles, hurdles. What's your plan to get through them? And let's not forget the word challenge. How do you challenge yourself to be a person of action? I've always felt in life, when you are doing anything, whether it's work or play, there should always be a goal in mind. What is your goal? See, we're not going to tell you what your goals are, because you live inside of your environmental home, inside of your body, inside of your brain. and that's your environment. As an educator, I've always thought with each little person that I dealt with when I was in the education field, what are we going to do today? Some of us are spontaneous, while others of us are planning ahead. And it's okay for both of those. We're not going to tell you right or wrong, because we want you just to think about your action. Your life as it stands right now, how do you look at your life? You say, well, my life is not the happiest. I don't get satisfaction out of living. And these are real scenarios that I'm giving you guys. These are not made up. I've had these things said to me. I'm unhappy. I want out of this life. But can I tell you, when you think about how you're going to do these things, what is your plan? For anything that you want to do in life, regardless of what it is, how it may be, come what may, you must always think. And today I ask you, what is your plan? You know, when people decide that they want to get out of a situation, they even have to plan to do that. Whether it's to break free or to continue on. But when you have made up your mind, did you know that your plan of action goes right into gear? When you have made up your mind, isn't it amazing how the beautiful mind of yours and the beautiful mind of mine works? When you are tired, you move into action. Is that a negative? Is that a positive? You be the decider of that. But here's what I want to tell you. There must always be an action for your plan. You're doing something. Why? Because you aren't helpless. You can decide that you want to do something or not. To maybe help you along, I say maybe, because some of you may listen to this podcast and say, that was nice, the voice was nice. I love hearing the host, Nisi, or the co-host, Trish. But we want to be something more. We want to help you to think about words. Why? Because it helps you to become emotionally intelligent, meaning that you're aware of what you need to do, you're aware of your feelings, you're aware of how you want to carry it out. And if you are needing help, this is the place to help you think about your plan. Now, the reason I did this for my plan was because I had a goal. And it started around the COVID. I said, what will I do while the world shuts itself down? How can I keep myself from being depressed? And how can I be of benefit to others? And I got this idea. And the idea was, I want to help other people, even if it's one person a day. That was a goal. I thought about it. While someone encouraged me about podcasting, then I didn't even know what podcasts were. But I became familiar by knowledge. So that plan turned into what is today's reality, and going forth since the COVID, and maybe even a little bit before the COVID started. No, around that time. But now, when I have thought about it, what has resulted because of my plan of action? Motivational Monday. You've arrived. Transformation Tuesday. You've been there. Wednesday Wellness. Think about Thursday. And from this podcast, we had to think about what we wanted it to look like. You are staring it in its face right now. What did we want it to be about? Because many people start podcasts. There are thousands of podcasts. Just pick your choice. But this one, we wanted to have the theme stick. Facing challenges. And boy, was it so appropriate, because we were facing the world being shut down because of COVID-19. So here we are. Are there still challenges that you're facing? Are there still find out exactly what to do? Are you trying to find out what can you do? What action can you take? Because if you choose not to take any action, then that would be nothing plus nothing equals something. Something you want to do. Even if it's a negative. This act of doing means that you will become active. And let's talk about that. Because every person that I have dealt with since that time I said I'd like to do something. So I had a plan, and we're going to talk about action plan. I had a plan, and the plan was that I wanted to reach people live. What will you do? Always think about the what. Sometimes we're facing stories or situations in our life. Sometimes our behavior is I don't want to give you a plan, because this is not the type of podcast that tells you what to do. But we're hoping that it motivates you and moves you into action without you feeling like you need to be forced. We don't want any forced people to say because they listened to our podcast they were forced. We want you to think about your plan of action. We want you to think of your life as your story, because why? It is your story. And some of you have had incredible life stories, life altering. And many of you have been honest in what has happened in your life. But here's what we don't want to do. We don't want to say we have no action. We have no movement that we want to do. So we are going to just sit there. But I want you to be thinking about it, and I don't want you to blame others because he can't, because you can't, or they can't, or they don't, and they won't, so you don't or won't. I want you to move. And when I say move, what does that mean? Sometimes you have to get out of your own way. I remember the first time I heard that, moving out of your own way, because sometimes we can be our worst critics. We know that we want to plan something, and a year later we're still talking about that same plan without having any movement forward. I think that's why kids, in fact, I know that's why kids are very precious to me, because if you talk to kids, and I'm talking about the little ones from ages 5 to 7, they really tell you what's on their mind. And they will say to you, when you ask them, what do they want to be when they grow up? They never say, I don't know. I've never heard any children ever say that. And their little minds are thinking. That's their active brain. And they don't even realize how powerful that instrument is, but they're smart. They will tell you fireman, police, boxer, doctor, lawyer. The list goes on and on, but I say to you as a full-grown adult that manages and directs your life, what is your plan? Because all of you, including myself, we're in circumstances, situations. None of us are free from it, whether it's challenging, ugly, or a very good situation. We all have them. So let me ask you, your plan of action. Do you make it or do you do it? Because your plan is going to be your plan. You know, many of us want people to tell us what to do. And I don't like doing that because it doesn't challenge you. You know, I have children, grown adult children of my own, and I'm a grandmother. And I was once in a situation where I had to tell my young children what to do. But now, because that mother in me is so instinctive, sometimes it's just good to see what they're going to do. Is that the case with you, seeing what you're going to do, or do you have to be told? Sometimes we look at the task in our life, whether it is to clean up, go to work, take the kids to school, spend time with your significant other, or just having me time. How do you fare? Because that takes action. When we think about action words, it's always doing something. Whether you're sitting down, standing up, swimming, running, jumping, lying down, everything you must do. And that's a 24-hour course. The course of doing something. Sometimes we say you want to do something. You ever saw the people that say, I'm going to do something? And then you ask them, what did they do about that situation last talked about? And they tell you they haven't gotten to it. Which actually means they've done nothing about it. Maybe they didn't even think about what their plans were. So I'm asking you today, what is your plan in your situation? I think every teacher, every parent, every person should always have a plan to do something, not just to produce it and then say, now what? I think we should fill in the blanks of what now? How? When? So that we move into action plans. I want you to be able to come up with your plan. And I'll give you some scenarios. Perhaps you're dealing with sobriety. How do you stay sober? Because you can go to your AA classes. This is the same for narcotics. If you're struggling with that, you can go to those classes. But really, isn't it all about you? You're getting clean. You're being able to say, I have recovered. I have, meaning that you've done it. And even when people say, I am recovering, because that word is thrown around, but I really want you to think about it the next time that you go to your AA meetings or your Narcotics Anonymous. Are you taking action? Or are they just words that you say, I am a recovering? Because you want to get to the word recovered. Recovered means that you're processed, you've had a plan, you're doing it. Even if you have a relapse, because there's always that possibility. Let's not fool ourselves. But can you now say that I'm working on recovering? Because sometimes you will get in those meetings and you think about telling your story. Are you retelling the story over and over again, and when you step away, you don't know what your plan of action? Because you're being routed to say that because everyone else says it. But are you recovering? What does that mean when we think about your action plan? And I think it's very important to talk about it. How do you plan? What if there were no meetings for a week or two? What would be your plan? How will you function in doing what you do? And what we do here, we access life. How will you live? What is your plan of action? And this is not to pick on anyone, but it's to think about it, what the plans are, because you can read the books, you can You can train to do anything, but doesn't mean that you will accomplish anything. You have to take a step. I think about a turtle, and my son has a turtle, and I love to watch that turtle because he's slow, but he's moving every day. What am I trying to say to you? Come a little closer. In your plan of action, it doesn't matter how you move as long as you're moving. Sometimes the turtle is very slow, and I will go over to his little tank and touch the tank to see if he's moving. As slow as he is, he continues to move. So it doesn't matter how your plan of action is as long as you're moving. Because some of us are a little quicker. We're more like rabbits. We move very quickly in what we want to do. Because both plans of action, whether you do it slow or fast, they are signs of movement. Does everyone get that? Signs of movement. Doing something. Again, Vibetalkfacingthelion podcast has been doing something around the world. People have called in. They've been inspired. They've been motivated. What is your inspiration? What inspires you to be able to do what you do? And I'm hoping that someone needs this today. Because this is not a podcast that picks on people. This is a podcast that helps you to motivate yourself and to think about whatever subject we're talking about. Your plan of action should be most important. We want you to think about the action plans. Moving on. Sometimes there are job changes. We've discussed people that have been at their job for years. They'll tell you that they've been 30 years on the job. And then they retire. And oftentimes, when they retire, just like I did from teaching in the education school form, I was asked, what are my plans? And I was asked that because I had been teaching for a very long time. And when I was ready to retire that part of my life, I was going to begin a new life. And I knew right then and there what I wanted to do. Didn't know it was going to be a podcast, but sometimes there are opportunities given to you that becomes a turn of events in your life, and that's okay too, as long as you keep it moving, as the kids say. So right when I was asked that, I wanted to do photography, more or less as a hobby. I never thought of that I would be hosting a podcast. I never, because I didn't know what a podcast was then. But now I'm teaching adults. And I want to thank every one of you for listening to our podcast. You moved into action. But I want to say, do you know what your next step is? Because there are stairs in your life. And you know how people say, because I'm one of them, I'd rather take the elevator. Sometimes you have to take the steps to get to the elevator. Come a little closer. Sometimes you have to take the steps to get to the elevator, the stairs, instead of avoiding them altogether. I found that out to be very true. So I'm going to ask you, what steps will you be taking? When we think of action words, we want to move into an activity. We want to think about, where do we go from here? How are we going to get there? Moving into action. You know, we learn very early in life about action words that are verbs. Remember, like I said, running, jumping, walking. It all involves movement. What is your plan? When we think about the action word of movement, how are you going to move? In your life right now, in my life right now, life is like a roadmap leading you to different directions. When you use your GPS, it's going to lead you to what your plan of action or your planned journey. When you get there, you'll be able to accomplish what you set out to do when you first decided that you're going to use a map or GPS. I hate maps. I just have to use that word. But GPSs, I'm down with that. But here it is. The GPSs sometimes may veer you off your course just slightly, but it does give you a roadway or the route that you're going to take. Do you track your progress, as to how long it's going to take? Remember what I said? I gave you the example of a turtle and the slow movement. But as long as it keeps moving, I'm good. As long as I see that turtle move, I'm good. And then I gave you the contrast of a rabbit and how fast they move. Which will you be? Which are you? Because it really doesn't matter. Because both have a plan to get to where they're going. And so as we move through life's uncertainties, challenges, situations, do we track our progress? You know, because some of us are a little slow, while others of us are fast. Our goal is what we want to achieve. You know, people tease me. And they say, you drive so slow. You drive like an old lady. But here's my plan. As I told a young 12-year-old kid, I had a little sports car. And he says, "You're going to get a ticket." I said, "Why?" "Because you drive this car like an old lady. You're supposed to drive it fast," he says, "because it's a sports car. You're not supposed to drive like that." You know what mattered? That I arrived safely. That when I set out for my destination, I arrived safely. How are you going to arrive at your plan of action? Are you going to set some goals for yourself? Are you going to have specific tasks? Because I want to talk about sobriety for a moment. If a person has a chemical dependency on drugs or alcohol, they don't just stop cold turkey. And if they do, they're going to have consequences. You know what they do? They wean themselves off. They have resources that do that. Sometimes you need a doctor. But there are things they have to do. And I don't want to make ever light of the situation, because a lot of people have successfully been sober for many, many years. It takes work. And they just didn't rely on the meetings. There was action that they had to do. They had a responsibility. And then, you know those things when they say, "I've been sober for a year. I've been sober now for 30 days. All of those are milestones, even if you didn't take a drink or a drug for 10 days. That's a milestone. But they didn't just get there by themselves. They decided that they wanted to act on something. They decided that their plan was to stop drinking or taking drugs. So I want you to think about your destinations in thinking about the map. I don't know if anybody's still using a map, but GPSs, how it's guiding you through your life's destination. I want you to think about your actions and focus on what you'd like to do. What is your desire? And when I work with people, I ask them, what is their goal for coming into Vibe Talk? What is their goal? What do they hope to achieve even when they come to Vibe Talk Facing the Lion Healing Center? What would they like to do? Because that's important. Really, when we think about the goals that we set for ourselves, which are plans, you know what we're really saying about our goals? What is our purpose? There's a reason for why people do what they do, even in the negative. I was thinking about Walt Disney because I went over something the other day and I was thinking, wow. I've learned so much and I'm inspired. I love Disney. Anybody who's been with me long enough knows that. But he was inspired. What got him to purpose his life. Because Walt Disney had some things happen in his life, like we all do. He bought his parents their first home. That home burnt down, and his mother died as a result of that fire. I can't even imagine what he struggled with. But then there's Disneyland. His pain was with purpose. What do we do? Because all of us, maybe we don't have something like that, but we can see that that's an inspiration for us if it is. What is your inspiration? You know, some of us like to go hiking. Not me. Not me. And some of us like to dance. I watched an interview of a well-known dancer that has an academy of dancing. And she said, my mother always encouraged the arts. This is a well-renowned person that we all know. What inspires you? What gets you motivated? When you think about your life and the enhancements that you've had, because I don't believe for one moment that anyone has ever just had 350 something bad days and not one good day. Think about that as an enhancement to your life, because I asked that question. Versus the bad, versus the challenging, versus the dark times. Has there ever been in your life something that was enhancing, something that helped you? Get inspired by that. Allow yourself to be able to, whether it's like the turtle or the rabbit, for monitoring your progress. Your plan of action. See, mine is on the back of the wall here, and when you see this podcast, you'll see it. I started out with this is because during the COVID, I had to find out what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it. And then the win came when I finally got the result. How about now? Will you be able to set clear goals? Being specific on your goals? Being responsible? You know, because young children, until you're about 18, you're responsible to your parents. Older people don't have people that they need to answer to. So I want you to think about your responsibility, why you do what you do. Remember when I talked about sobriety? People have reasons for why they want to get sober. And sometimes their reasons are very tragic. We had a caller that actually had a terrible accident. And he called in and he said, I was listening to your podcast. And because of that accident, I decided that I needed to get sober. Again, the action came, but he had to do work. He had to set for himself actions that were reachable. Some of us have these outlandish goals and we never reach them. You know the goals that we say we're going to do every time the new year rolls in. And I'd like to ask you, those of you who are listening, when you set your New Year's goal, how are you doing with that goal? Because we all say we're going to do something new, we're going to do something different. Now we're in September. How are we doing? I want us to think about that. Where will you get the help from? Who do you expect to be accountable for your actions? I want you to be able to answer that. We're going to be right back with Trisha's Treasures. We'll be right back. Right back.
Cause we're called Vibetalkfacingthelion podcast. Go check your favorite streaming platforms.
We're back, and we are going to go now to Trisha's Treasures. And just one moment. One moment.
Hi, this is Trisha's Treasures. Affiliated with Vibetalkfacingthelion podcast.
Hi guys, today we're going to be talking about patterns. You might be wondering, what patterns do you mean? What are you talking about? I'm talking about something bigger than apple, apple, banana, banana, apple, apple. I'm talking about something bigger than that. And we often get ourselves into these patterns and it becomes very normal. I was watching The Wiz. I was watching the play, and I remember how the Scarecrow was given this, what's it called? Like a creed. He was given a creed or a affirmation song. It's called the Crow Commandments, and it was talking about how he can't win. No matter if you think that life is great, you still can't win. It's a lie. You're always going to be at the bottom. You'll never make it to the top. You don't think about what's happening to you. You just lay back and accept the fact that you're losing in life. That's basically what the Crow Commandments is talking about. And they would have the Scarecrow say these affirmations like every day as a pattern. And the thing about the Scarecrow is he didn't have a brain, so he just believed what he was told, and he just accepted the pattern because he felt, since he's not good at what he does, which is scaring crows away, that he should just accept that I can't win. I can't do this. And so he kept repeating that pattern of words in his mind. Can any of you relate to that? Like, have you ever repeated something as that in your mind before? I know I have. Like, I recall when I was making this album that I have called Underneath, that I kept saying, I can't do that note. I can't do it. Like, why can't I do that? I don't know. Nah, I can't do it. Let me try another key. And then I woke up the next day and I just started a whole nother song because I felt like I couldn't do it. And there are so many songs that I haven't dropped yet because of that same I can't do it. This is too much. Nah, that doesn't sound right. I have a pattern of overthinking. Can anybody else relate to that? Because I am an overthinker. Sometimes the patterns that we have in our life seem very simple, and the big part is they seem normal. They become a normality to you, and you feel like, why do I need to change this pattern? Because this is my life. This is how I've been living for 24 years, for 18 years, for 45 years. I've been singing the same song, and I don't see a problem with it. That's probably what you're saying right now. But that's why it's important, before we continue in our normalities, before we continue in our habits, we have this thing where we refuse to reflect on to see how it's actually helping us. Because if you're used to something, that means like it's supposed to be there because you're used to it. That's how humans work. For example, if I'm used to taking the long way home, I'm always going to take the long way home because I'm used to it. I don't care about a shortcut. I don't care about them. I'm going to take the long way home. And some people might wonder, why is she taking the long way home when she could just take the other way around? Why is this person going about a situation or a challenge this way when they could go about it the other way? They always do the same thing and they always face the same solution. And it's important to understand why a person follows those certain patterns. You never know if they've tried the pattern that you think that they should try, the way that you think that they should go, the way that you think that is better. You never know if they tried that or not. That's why it's important to listen, be considerate, try to understand before soaking in the perceptions of that person and how you view them on how they handle certain things. That's why in Vibe Talk Facing the Lion podcast, we always let you guys have your space. We always give you guys your moment to speak without people interrupting you. That's our way of listening and understanding and being considerate and not being judgmental. The question is, what patterns do you have? How are they helping you? Do they help you? Patterns start from little things like your daily routines. For example, when I wake up in the morning, either I'm listening to music or I make music. Then after that, I drink coffee. And then after that, I eat. And then I get in my chores and my schoolwork. And then I make time for me to either read or play mobile games or something to relax. And then I help with dinner. So that's my routine. And now that I'm thinking about it, something that I can work on in that pattern is, yeah, I wake up and do music, but sometimes I wake up like very early in the morning, like 4:30, and I'm up for like 9 hours, and I know I'm hungry, but I don't eat. So I wait until I'm finished with the music, and sometimes that's like late in the day, whether if I'm inspired to make a beat and make some lyrics that same moment while I'm making music. Sometimes I'm literally starving. Yeah, I'm starving, but I ignore it. And by the time I'm finished, like all the energy is sucked out of me. I have no energy left to do anything, but I could change that by just eating something. When I'm hungry, eat something. Because I need my nutrition for today. So that's something I could change in my morning patterns. Is it easy to change? No. Does it need to be changed? Yes. To me, it does. From my perspective, as I'm looking at my routine, I think that that needs to change. And that's why it's up to you whether you want to change your patterns, your habits, your routines, or not. So it's up to you. It has a lot to do with stepping back and taking a view at yourself and seeing what your pattern is. And is it the right song that you want to be singing to yourself every morning? It takes a lot to step back and view how your patterns are impacting you. It's as if we're in our own reality TV shows and we get our own screen time and our own commentary while we're looking at what's happening on our scene. We're trying to explain, hey, so Angela, why did you get mad at Stephanie yesterday? You guys always argue about the same thing. Do you think it's okay to resolve, to finally find a better solution from us arguing all the time about the same thing when we meet up? And then the person, Angela, she explains why they always argue all the time. It's like that with us looking at our patterns and asking ourselves questions. What do we need to change? So, what are your results of your pattern? How does it make you feel? That's a deep question. Like, how do these patterns make you feel? It's one thing for a pattern to feel normal, but it's another thing when you dive into the emotions that it gives you by following this pattern that you're having. For example, I have a pattern of holding in anger, and it's normal for me, but it doesn't help when I'm in a disagreement and people want me to communicate with them about what's happening, what's wrong, what are you feeling right now? And they're genuinely concerned. But because I don't want to be perceived as an angry person, I just like say, oh, nothing's wrong. It's fine. I sing the same song, nothing's wrong. It's fine. Do you know that tune? Because I know you know that tune. Because I'm not the only one that sings that song. It doesn't matter if you're in the right key or in the same melody. We all know that song. That nothing's wrong. It's fine. We always sing it, especially the people that don't want to tell the other ones what's wrong with you, what's going on. Yeah, we know about that. I love the humor in it, but there's such reality in that humor though, because I have a lot of unresolved situations because I kept singing that same tune. I kept saying the same thing. And they're so used to that that they actually think that I'm unbreakable or they don't bother to ask. It has instilled in them that I don't get upset. I don't get mad. I do have high tolerance. My tolerance is very high. My patience is it's strong. My patience meter is, it's out there. But that doesn't mean that I'm not human. And that doesn't mean that I don't get mad, I don't get upset. It doesn't mean that saying I'm fine, saying I'm good, that nothing's wrong is not true. I know if I expect people to understand me and if I expect that to change, if I expect people to respect me, I have to be honest. I have to change the pattern by acknowledging that that made me angry, that made me upset, that frustrated me just now, that irritated me. And that will instill a new pattern in me, which is the pattern of honesty. So, what patterns do you want to change? Would you like to change? What patterns have you been thinking about changing? This is Trisha's Treasures, and before you go, I'm going to play you guys the intro of my new album, Underneath, and
That's Lion Power. You can see Trisha's Treasures by hashtagging it or visiting our YouTube page. Also, her music, she will put it in the comment section for you. Thank you for that. So, today's podcast is Action Your Plan. This is Motivational Monday, and I want to, before we close, say thank you to all the viewers of last week's podcast on broken families. We had more than a little over 1,000. Right now we are at 1,000 and something. Thank you, and thank you to all the communities, whomever listen. We'd love for you to tell us where you're listening from when you do listen, and you can be anonymous. Don't forget, you can call in about today's podcast on what you thought, what you're going through. 1-888-721-9260. You can call before, during, and after the podcast. Find this podcast streaming just as soon as we're off air on your favorite choice of podcast listening. Thank you, and I hope that you all will be motivated for your action plans. Good day, everyone.
Don't want you just to make a resolution. I want you to think about. I was really about to lose it, then I got the vibe with it. I really